I find this actually kind of funny that these protesters are talking about a hunger strike and talking about nobody's taking care of them and stuff like that. Meanwhile, at the exact same time, they're defacing a World War I memorial in Central Park. And of course, I'm showing you guys the footage of this. Now, you guys will obviously hear some of this footage here in a second, especially given the craziness of these quote unquote hunger strikes, especially given the fact that they're also saying that, well, the school facilitators aren't taking care of us. And I'm kind of thinking to myself, aren't you people supposed to be revolutionaries, all hard and whatnot? Oh, yeah, that right there is right. They're just suburban kids who are listless vessels who claim that they're fighting back against the man. And of course, they're also using all other forms of grievances because, once again, it's 2024. It's an election year. And race wars, grievance wars only happen like once every 4 years. But of course, they're about to get, how do I say, I think it's going to be kind of a zigzag thing, but given the fact that Israel is about to go into Rafah, and of course, I'm showing you guys an image of Rafah, that right there being the map image of Rafah, and of course, the country that it borders is Egypt. I think we've got bigger problems here to worry about, but still, though, at the same time, though, I'm here to tell you what I think is probably going to happen, and of course, respond and react to everything that's been going on the past week about this very issue.
Us as strikers, we will continue to starve until they meet our demands. In addition, I would like to note that the administration is also lying to the media. To the media, they have announced that they have been consistently sending their own doctors to come to our area and monitor us hunger strikers and monitor our health. This is a lie.
In the world engages in the spiritual practice of fasting. The three major Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, are no exception to this. Jesus himself said, of some evils in the world, they require both prayer and fasting. And we are here to live into that word.
Okay, so I'll let you guys hear some of the craziness at the college campuses that are going on now. Not a whole lot, but obviously the one that really makes me laugh the most is obviously the girl who is let's just say she's challenged when it comes to weight, of course, and she's talking about hunger strike and fasting. I don't see how that's actually going to happen. But I've also got another video coming out this week talking about the left and Islam and why it's absolutely crazy, because I came across this the other day and it's actually happening. But seeing how it is that the nation of Israel, the IDF, is going into the city of Rafah, which is supposed to be a refugee center for Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Of course, that refugee center is going to have dudes with guns and whatnot, freedom fighters, Hamas soldiers, whatever you might want to call them, which, by the way, I don't call them freedom fighters. It's just affectionately said to them because that's what they claim they are, even though Hamas actually controls a very, very large portion of the government, the Palestinian government, in the Gaza Strip. I find it very, very odd, though, given that this right here occurred. I find it very, very odd, though, that they chose now of all times to actually go in. But of course, like I said before in the very opening of this video, there is another danger to consider here, which I think could affect the entire situation. Now, before we fully dive into the situation and respond to all the craziness out there and what's going on and how it is our fearless leader is handling this, I want to go ahead and say this right now. This video right here that I did on the Pierce Morgan, Dr. John Mearsheimer discussion, that right there will be out a little bit later on Wednesday night. I've got to kind of put this video out on Tuesday night, or I got to make it on Tuesday night to get it out on Wednesday. But of course, I'm doing that obviously for a reason. But there are some updates in a previous video that I did. I'm going to have to kind of give some more clarification on at the end of this video here. So make sure you guys stick around for the full video. I'm going to try to be as clear and concise as I can be with this one right here, because I think it's actually a clear and concise issue. With that right there being said, now let's go ahead and fully dig into this. So, do you guys remember a few weeks ago? Well, let me roll this.
Today will remain vigilant to all threats and will not hesitate to take all necessary action to protect our people. President Biden adding that he ordered U.S. forces in the Middle East to help intercept dozens of missiles launched towards Israel. The president met with his national security team in the Situation Room for roughly 2 hours Saturday before a phone call with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in which a senior administration official tells NBC News the president reaffirmed his commitment to Israel's security while making clear the U.S. will not participate in its response to Iran.
Netanyahu is probably a little bit peeved about what's really going on as far as Biden's response to the U.S. has always been traditionally a little bit more pro-Israel, obviously very pro-Israel. Most Americans are. And of course, when I pulled up that little article from Frank Luntz, and you guys saw that people ages below the age of 30, 57% to 41% favor Israel, what I've tried to factor in, what I tried to explain in that previous video where I talked about that, was the fact that it's not really people who are going to college that are. It's people who are not in college that are actually more pro-Israel. It's something about college happens to people. People get radicalized, but most people, once they get out of college and they actually go into the real world and get a job and whatnot, they find that their views that they were taught, the very, very leftist views that they were taught, are no longer useful. And then a slow red-pilling process begins to set in because these people do, in fact, grow up doing the corporation's bidding, yet they claim to be protesting the corporations because, as I explained in the previous video, the vast majority of the corporate interest, or the people who are donating to Biden, are actually donating to Hamas's cause. We talked about that in the previous video, but that right there will be coming up in this video too. So what is the situation now?
Sure, this was solid. Now the Associated Press is reporting Hamas has reportedly told Qatar and Egypt, the mediators of those countries, Hamas will accept the ceasefire proposal with Israel. Now, this reportedly includes a prisoner swap in addition to a stop in the fighting. The development comes as, of course, we were expecting the Israeli ground operation into Hamas's final stronghold in Rafah. So on the heels of Israel invading where their last stronghold was, where surely there is some Hamas leadership, they say, no, we'll go back to October 6th, because that's what we're talking about here. They had a ceasefire, and October 7th, Hamas broke it and slaughtered and raped people in Gaza, Israelis. They crossed the line. They crossed the line for humanity, and now they want a deal.
The ceasefire agreement that Hamas accepted was brokered by Qatar, which, of course, is the nation that houses Hamas's main headquarters, and Egypt, who, by the way, they border with Rafah. Israel was actually hoping that Hamas would reject the ceasefire, but I think that even with the craziest of demands that were in said ceasefire, Israel obviously knew that this right here was going to be a problem. Israel, let's just go ahead and be honest about it. They view Hamas as a great big giant headache, and it just continues to get worse and worse and worse. But of course, you'll notice that this little bit has been re-edited in. Obviously, I chose to re-edit it in because, like an idiot, I left a little detail out. I apologize, but I needed to go ahead and kind of throw this in here for you guys. So what happens next? Well, the situation with Egypt bordering Rafah could get a little bit hairy. Just saying. This right here, nothing that the Palestinians do at this moment in time surprises me. These people claim that they want a ceasefire, but then they make all kinds of ridiculous demands because these people are absolutely crazy. These people are absolutely insane. Israel is kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, and I guess that Bibi Netanyahu's kind of like, well, screw it. I really and truly don't care. I'm going to go ahead and go for the heart of the matter, and I'm going to go ahead and put an end to this now. Maybe if I strike Rafah, this place of importance, maybe these people right here just may, I don't know, finally give up. I hate to tell you this, but that right there probably will not occur. However, I do want to say this right before I go any further. This right here is not a prediction, but I do want to say this. The strike on Rafah could be not really a strike on Rafah. It could be a siege on Rafah. And what I mean by a siege on Rafah is it may just be like the good old-fashioned siege you see in the old days, like say like the siege of Vicksburg or the siege of Leningrad, all the great sieges that have happened in world history. Now, by the way, sieges are pretty daggone bloody. I mean, no food gets placed into these areas. No food gets sent in. Power is cut, all that type of stuff there. But the reason why I'm saying it could be a siege is because it could just be, I don't know, a way to tie down additional forces that could be used against you later on. And maybe that right there is what Israel's real aim is with this, is to use it as a bit of a bluff and a bit of a feint. Just saying, especially given the fact that Rafah borders the nation of Egypt. And while Egypt is not fully friendly with Israel, Egypt does have a history of being both anti-Jew, but also at the exact same time, they are also, let's just say, they're not exactly fond of the Palestinians. And when asked on several occasions to take them in, Egypt obviously continues to say, no, we do not want these people in our land. I wonder why. Seeing how it is that Biden has, let's say, stopped the humanitarian aid effort into the Gaza Strip. Of course, they were actually saying that to help the IDF out. He's pulled the funding on that. He's also at the exact same time put a freeze on Israel's recent ammunition shipment. I think it's kind of funny that we're now getting mixed messaging once again. As I have said before, this right here will not work. But here's Biden not too long ago talking about this.
Hatred of Jews didn't begin with the Holocaust. It didn't end with the Holocaust either, or even after our victory in World War II. This hatred continues to lie deep in the hearts of too many people in the world, and it requires our continued vigilance and outspokenness. That hatred was brought to life on October 7th in 2023. On the sacred Jewish holiday, the terrorist group Hamas unleashed the deadliest day of the Jewish people since the Holocaust. Driven by ancient desire to wipe out the Jewish people off the face of the earth, over 1,200 innocent people, babies, parents, grandparents, slaughtered in their kibbutz, massacred at a music festival, brutally raped.
And here is Biden last week.
We're a civil society, and order must prevail. Throughout our history, we've often faced moments like this because we are a big, diverse, free-thinking, and freedom-loving nation. In moments like this, there are always those who rush in to score political points. But this isn't a moment for politics. It's a moment for clarity. There is no place for hate speech or violence of any kind, whether it's anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, or discrimination against Arab Americans or Palestinian Americans.
The messaging on this situation is absolutely horrible. It's absolutely stupid, but we already know the real reason why. You see, Comrade Poopy Pants, which by the way was I'm going to call him, Diaper Biden. He's got a history of gaffes. He's got a history of saying the wrong thing. He's got a history of saying things off script. And of course, he's also got a history of what else? Exposing what the hell is going on behind the scenes. You see, he has to stay on script. Or, as we're finding out right now, the campaign wants to put him back in the basement, essentially gagging him.
Aren't just gagging Trump, they're gagging Biden too. While Trump's blowing past the Democrat judge's speech limits, Biden's pulling the emergency brake. NBC reporting that the Biden campaign is going to keep the president away from crowds and keep him quiet. Trump's gagged from telling the truth, but Biden's gagged from telling stories like his uncle was eaten by cannibals. They call it less is more.
Our campaign believes in quality over quantity. We believe that these touches, these smaller things that are getting directly to the point about what is going on in the stakes of this election are going to be easier for voters to tap into.
Quality over quantity? Since when is less Biden better quality? If you like chocolate, you want the whole Hershey bar. You don't just want the Hershey Kiss. A Hershey Kiss isn't quality over quantity. It's the same chocolate. Usually when you like something, you don't want less of it.
Let me tell you something really quick. The Democratic Party turning to Michael Steele to help them out with this situation is not going to help at all. Michael Steele, by the way, is the former head of the RNC, and a lot of people have credited him with the Tea Party movement and all that type of stuff there, but he really didn't do anything. If anything, he's kind of the reason why it was we had so many snakes seize said movement. But outside of that there, the guy only existed for cannon fodder, and he only existed for somebody to beat up or get beaten up by Chris Matthews on hardball or softball, if you want to call it, on that network. It didn't take me long back in 2012 when I was watching all the networks going into the election year to do media comparisons and media analysis, which, by the way, is made pretty daggone apparent with you the first hour of watching any one of these major media networks. It didn't take me long to figure out that he was about as useless as tits on a board, or about as popular as a turd in a swimming pool. Just saying. Let me tell you my fear before I tell you what ends up happening. Of course, that right there after we get this next part. So here's the fear that you should probably really have. First and foremost, none of these trust fund babies, none of these college kids are going to enlist in the military, okay? They're just not going to do that, okay? And I also talked about this in the video I have coming out later on Wednesday night, where it is that nobody wants to join. I talked about that very, very briefly during that discussion, that debate that Piers Morgan had with John Mearsheimer about what's going on in Ukraine. Just go ahead and think of Wednesday as like a foreign policy day. Here's my fear. Let's say that the attack on Rafah is, in fact, for real. It's an actual attack on Rafah. Israel goes in. What happens if, let's just say, a few stray rockets enter into Egypt? Now, Egypt hates, they don't like Israel. They're friendlier to Israel today, but they have a history of being anti-Jew. They have a history of being very anti-Israel. They really and truly do not like the Palestinians. They don't want the Palestinians to come anywhere near their country. They don't want them in there. They find them to be troublemakers. You see, my fear is this right here. What if Israel fires a few stray rockets into Egypt? The situation gets worse. Egypt finally retaliates, joins the side of the Palestinians, and then all of a sudden the country of Jordan comes in, and they back Israel, of course. And then next thing you know, Saudi Arabia, looking at the interest, they call for the United States to get involved. And of course, under this leadership, you really and truly can't tell, but you already know it's probably going to be the weak position because Biden thinks it's smart to try to walk a tightrope between the pro-Palestinian Hamas crowd and the pro-Israel crowd, and quite frankly, it's not working out for him too good. And also at the exact same time, it also makes me wonder when Syria is going to be coming. You see, this right here could be a disaster. Okay, this right here could be an absolute disaster. It could be a nightmare. As I have said before, the best thing you could have done was just simply put a carrier group out there in the Mediterranean, and that right there would have deterred. It would have absolutely deterred any other nations possibly getting involved, and this situation probably would have been squashed, even if Israel was to fire a rocket into Egypt. Just figure I'd go ahead and get that out of the way. But, of course, this situation is probably going to get a lot worse. And if this situation right here gets a lot worse, guess what else gets a lot worse? These campus protests, which, of course, are continuing even beyond graduation day. But it brings me back to the donors. It brings me back to the people who were funding this. It brings me back to an Axios article that came out recently, which, by the way, will be in the description box.
Axios breaks it down. The Rafah assault threatens to be Israel breaking point for Democrats. Yeah, Joe Biden's shown himself to be impotent. He has no influence. Israel doesn't care. And suspending military aid to Israel's done nothing. Now, I wonder if Joe Biden will get impeached over this, but I really don't think so. And maybe not so much because they won't do it, like they don't want to hold Joe Biden accountable, but more so, I don't think Republicans want to give Democrats the opportunity to swap him out. You know what I mean? Axios reports, Democrats in Congress are furious as Israel moves into the southern Gaza city of Rafah after they and President Biden spent months trying to prevent such an operation. Really? So you mean Joe Biden's biggest donors? And, you know, this was a big story yesterday, but I'll pull it up to make sure that.
Okay, look, really quick. I want to go ahead and say this. I talked about the donations. I talked about the money. I talked about the people who were financing this. The guy with the. I talked about Bill Gates. I talked about Rockefeller. I talked about some of the individuals very, very briefly in a previous video that I made about this same exact topic. So I don't think I need to rehash that. I just think it's kind of funny that all these people who claim eat the rich, I hate the rich, and of course the same people who also stormed the Met Gala for whatever reason, but don't get me started on that right there because once again, it's something that quite frankly I'm not very interested in. These same people are working on behalf of the very, very rich, wealthy donors. And of course, for whatever reason, they think this is a winning strategy for the Democratic Party. It's like I said before, maybe they think that the whole idea is to lean in to that pro-Palestine vote. I said earlier, and I didn't touch on it right then because I got this bad habit of saying something and then coming back to it later on, that this strategy is probably not going to pay off for a reason. And the reason why it won't pay off is because you still got 57% of that bloc that are actually siding with Israel in this conflict. I'm putting it back up for you guys now, the poll from, and by the way, they've been polling it for a while. It's actually been shifting more and more and more on the pro-Israel side here recently. The reason why I'm bringing this up is that Biden was gaining in one demographic, and the demographic that he was gaining in was actually older voters. He actually looked like he was going to beat the former president, which, by the way the older vote splits is kind of convoluted and confusing, but it seems that way, but when you actually dig into it, it really isn't. But the point is this right here. He was losing older voters. If he effectively takes Hamas side, those older voters will go back to Trump. And I talked about this earlier where I said that the college crowd is, in fact, still going to be supporting either Biden or Cornel West or Jill Stein, or maybe even Bobby Kennedy. More than likely, it'll be Cornel West. He'll be the one that gets the most amount of votes. But see, the thing about this right here is this. Not everybody age 18 to 29 is going to college. The vast majority of them are not in college at all. They got out of high school, they got a job, they went to work, showed up with their girlfriend, may have had a child very, very early. They're not going to college. They ain't got time to go to college, so therefore they're less likely to be radicalized. They're growing up the natural way. And of course, there's been a great big giant shift amongst very, very young males to the Republican side. What I'm trying to say to you is this right here. Young people are becoming more and more based. The young people outside of college. You know, the ones who work at the auto shop, the ones who work down the road. Yeah, the good kind, the good ones. The ones who typically tend to have their heads on straight. The ones who are, quite frankly, living in reality, unlike these college pricks. But that right there brings me to the next
Pro-Palestinian protesters are backed by a surprising source. Biden's biggest donors. Biden's donors are supporting the anti-Israel protests. Biden's biggest donors are they're Democrat donors. And now all of a sudden, because I want to make sure this is clear, these people are funding leftist causes and not just Joe Biden. All of a sudden now Joe Biden is on the side of Gaza and anti-Israel. Democrats in Congress are furious. They and President Biden spent months trying to prevent such an operation. A full-scale invasion could be a sea change moment for Democrats on Israel and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, with whom relations have become increasingly strained. I think it's going to further erode Democrat support, one House Democrat engaged on the issue told Axios. Another expressed profound disappointment that Netanyahu apparently would rather prolong this war and has forsaken the hostages. Well, I have an honest question. Considering the defiance of that Israel is throwing in the face of the U.S., considering Biden and Democrats defying Israel's aims, I wonder if the Groyper and white identitarian factions will swing full Democrat and support Joe Biden in this election.
Before I talk about the white identitarian crowd fully, let me play this last part for you.
Biden, one of the most crooked presidents we've ever seen, a man that many conservatives have claimed didn't actually even win the election. And now, and I'm not saying everybody, I'm saying there was a guy who said, I'd vote for Joe Biden if he came out against Israel. Well, he did. Biden repeatedly is coming out against Israel. Biden barred a military aid shipment to Israel. So are these people who hate Israel and the anti-Semites, I'm not saying the same group, but many, big overlap, they're going to vote for Joe Biden now? I wouldn't be surprised.
A lot of Democrat congressmen are, believe it or not, actually pro-Israel. They get a lot of money from one organization, and it makes you wonder if maybe they might be considering their position. I don't think they are, because, once again, I'm also a guy who believes very, very much in God. I believe very, very much that everything that's happening right now is end times prophecy. One of the things that is said in prophecy is that men with good hearts or people with good hearts fail them. Now, we already know about the Trump deranged crowd. We already know about the Israel deranged crowd. We already know about the radical far left. Okay. There are a lot of people out there who actually have very, very good hearts, but they've been manipulated so much by the mainstream media. It's part of the reason why it is we're going into this more media criticism style here very, very soon. Of course, it's taken me a while to fully implement at least a few videos that were more in that realm. But the thing is, right, there are people out there who still do have good hearts. They just have been manipulated so much by the media, and they, quite frankly, their brains are starting to break, and they're starting to realize they've been lied to. Some of them, of course, are actually black-pilled, living with the policies they, quite frankly, voted for. And more than likely, these people just don't see voting as an option to fix the problem. But that right there could, in fact, be people with good hearts failing them. Back in 2014, 2015, CNN labeled Richard Spencer far right. Okay. He was labeled far right in 2016, claimed he was to be supporting Trump, all that type of stuff, even though Richard Spencer actually at one point in time ran with Ron Paul, which might be one of the reasons why it is that Ben Shapiro considered him to be like alt-right or anti-Semitic. But then again, though, Spencer didn't last very, very long over there. So that right there could be the real reason why it is that that happened. I don't know. I'm just saying we'll probably explore that at a later date. Spencer had a conversation with Dinesh D'Souza a long time ago. And I was going to bring this up in a project I had called Racism and the Left. Spencer's not a right-winger. As a matter of fact, the vast majority of things that Spencer wants is on the left. Now, I'm not saying that Spencer and the Groypers are the same. I'm not saying that at all. I want to go ahead and make that very, very clear. I didn't make it clear earlier, but I want to make it clear right now. That's a group that is susceptible to the left because Spencer would eventually come out at some point in time and eventually he would endorse Joe Biden and support Joe Biden. By the way, CNN, for whatever reason, still has this clown go on their show from time to time. And recently, other podcasts have been too. This guy right here is obviously a drain on the movement. A lot of people are drains on the movement. But also something else too about him is this right here. This is a guy who's about to be 40, in his 40s. At this point in time, you're not going to change his mind. Whereas somebody who's in their very, very early 20s, you can change their mind. I don't think that the white identitarian side of either side is really that large. I just don't think it is. I think it's a very small radicalized group. And of course, you get people who say that they'll vote for Biden just simply over this right here alone. I don't think that's going to happen closer and closer and closer we get to the election cycle. I think these people would be more inclined to just simply stay home. But there will be some out there that will make some noise, so don't be surprised. So what's going to happen? What's going to happen is that Israel, of course, is going to do what Israel does, and the situation will probably get a little bit worse. And, of course, Biden, of course, will probably get a lot worse because Joe Biden, for whatever reason, is not a very, very strong leader. And, of course, other people in his White House are controlling him, and they're being controlled by somebody else. But I think everybody who's controlling everybody is, quite frankly, lazy. Let me go ahead and kind of put a bow on top of this video before I close out, give you guys just one very, very quick update. In the video that I did last night, and of course, it's actually a video that I did in the morning and released on Tuesday night, because I'm releasing this video right here on lunch, right around lunchtime on Wednesday. I did talk about at the very end about doing one video a day that was just better edited. That is the goal for the rest of at least for the summertime, and of course, going into the fall. That's the goal. And that right there is going to be put on hold just for a few days, because what I'm going to be doing is I'm obviously going to be blitzing like normal, and I'm going to be doing that up until about probably next Thursday or next Wednesday. I'm going to be out of town for a couple of days, so hopefully I can implement that next week. The goal was to do it this week, but it probably won't happen this week. So expect videos to be released a little bit later in the day after tomorrow, because these videos are going to be coming out at 1 o'clock and 6 o'clock tomorrow. But come Thursday, Friday, it's going to be a little bit later in the day. It's going to be between that 3 o'clock and 8 o'clock block. And we're probably going to be doing that as far as like one video a day is concerned. We're going to be going back to the community, to the community posting. I don't really use it very often, the community tab. And of course, I'm also going to be going back to posting on Rumble here soon. Now, how often I post on Rumble, I'm not sure, but I'll try to leave a link in the description box. With that rather being said, guys, please tell me what you think about this right here. Also, one more thing too, expect the videos to also be shorter too. Just simply saying, a little bit more concise and not as bloated. And please hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sign up in the comment section, and I'll see you guys later.